Okay, if we are done talking about the Marauder, we'll move on to the Valkyrie. Now, the Valkyrie is an airborne assault carrier and a VTOL craft. Well, it has VTOL capabilities, used to ferry special forces such as stormtrooper squads and drop troop regiments from combat zones. Now, it doesn't land fully when deploying them; they just jump out of the aircraft or use grav chutes. But it's quite well armoured for an aircraft. It's basically the closest thing we've got so far, apart from the Chinook, which is close to being a helicopter, really, because of the VTOL capabilities, I would assume. It's primarily armed with a multi-laser, which can be replaced with a las cannon and 2 door-mounted heavy bolters, and can also take 2 Hellstrike missiles or 2 rocket pods. And if it does mount extra fuel tanks, it's also capable of carrying a modified Drop Sentinel, Cyclops demolition vehicle, or a sentry gun.
Am I allowed to weep before I begin this?
Yes, you may.
I know you've all been waiting for the Valkyrie. I bet half of you own the model, or would at least like to.
It's shit, isn't it?
It's not so good. This is the second time this has happened in this episode, and the second time this has happened in this series. We're setting new records. The lift-to-drag ratio is actually negative.
Oh dear. Imperial Navy, you're doing so well up until this point. Said no
The
one.
wings are angled in such a way that when combined with the tail fin, it shoves itself straight into the ground. It generates a total of 3.9 Gs of lateral downforce, which is almost half a G more lateral downforce than a Formula One racer.
Oh dear.
It can't fly, period. There's nothing you could do. You could put vector thrusting on it, you could put anti-gravity on it, it doesn't matter. The moment you begin accelerating forward to anything over 50 kilometers an hour and the downforce kicks in, it's going to slam itself into the ground. I'm sorry, Imperium. I've had some aircraft that were ridiculous, but at least their wings generated lift. You've managed to design 2 aircraft that do so badly, their wings not only don't generate lift, they generate downforce.
So we're back at the point where the brick wall is more aerodynamic.
The Space Marines were more aerodynamic.
Oh dear God. That's pretty bad.
If, for some odd reason, in some parallel universe where physics don't apply, it flew, it would function relatively similar to a Black Hawk attack helicopter, not the troop carrier variant, in terms of firepower, possibly even having the same amount of firepower as a Cobra attack helicopter, depending on the variant you chose. Apologize. We highly suspect that it's actually built on a modular pod system, so you can change what its primary role is by just flipping over the pod out of it and putting a new pod into it. This allows you to reconfigure the Valkyrie for whatever you want to have it do. Transport troops, need more guns, need it to carry a tank. Would make it very flexible, again, if it flew. Sadly, however, all of this is for naught as far as I can tell. It doesn't fly. It will never fly. There is no amount of vector thrust, rockets, or extra engines you could rig onto it. Even with anti-gravity technology, it can't fly because it's pushing itself into the ground.
Oh dear. It's not going well, is it?
At best, we have a pod racer for guardsmen.
Oh God. Don't bring up Star Wars.
Well, I hope you're prepared because these last 3 are where everything falls apart.
Yes. Now, we're going to be moving on to, quite frankly, the most adorable of the aircraft we're looking at today, because it is fucking adorable. The ARVUS Lighter. It's a cargo shuttle, essentially, and generally it is completely unarmed, though it can be retrofitted to have some weapons on hostile worlds. Also, it's also got the nickname the Little Pig, which is also adorable.
Dear Imperium, aircraft with less wings than they have fuselage don't fly. Aircraft without vector thrusting to assist them when they have less wings than they have body do not fly. Please take notes. It didn't register a lift-to-drag ratio at all. The foam model we cast out with the 3D printer, there's not enough wingspan to even get the air to travel under it, much less get a generate lift. I examined multiple pictures and built several different mock-up models to try to get something to work. We tried an idea of vector or directional thrust, but there are no vectored or directional thrusters on this aircraft. It actually lands and takes off in the same traditional way that a modern jet fighter does, with wheels.
The little pig has wheels. That's adorable.
1,600 kilometers an hour. It's faster than the bombers. It's faster than the Valkyrie. It's nearly the same speed as the fighters.
But it has no aerodynamic capabilities whatsoever, it seems.
So what I'm imagining here is there's a catapult with literal, what would be referred to as flying pigs on it, that hurls them into the air just past the horizon, and then they kick on their engines to get them the rest of the way before they horrifically and tragically crash land in the same way a bag of puppies drowns. And I'm just like, oh, their poor adorable faces, they just burned.
Well, at least it'll work in space.
Maybe. It has no armament, by the way, so I couldn't examine that. As far as armor goes, the little pig is fat. Taking it apart, it has 106 millimeters of armor.
That's a fat little piggy.
Has more armor than a Tiger tank's frontal plate. That's more armor than a Super Pershing's frontal upper plate.
That's more armor than most Eldar vehicles in general.
I know!
Okay, well, there's nothing more to add for the ARVUS. Let's look at another light shuttle.
Except maybe when pigs fly.
Oh. So next up, the AQUILA lander. Now, this is used to carry officers or other important people from orbit to ground level, and is named so because of its wing arrangement. The wings end in a feather-like design and taper back as if an imitation of the sign of the Imperial AQUILA. It's not designed as a combat vehicle, as it's generally only armed with a heavy bolter, although you do get some variants that replace the heavy bolter with a multi-laser or an auto cannon for self-defense, but it's armed enough to survive atmospheric insertion.
I mean, it flies.
Hooray!
It has really similar flight characteristics to an F-4 Phantom. Why do so many aircraft in the Warhammer 40k universe work similar to an F-4 Phantom?
Someone's always a fan of the F4 Phantom back at Games Workshop's HQ.
There's one issue. One tiny little problem. Even in the Warhammer 40k universe, it weighs 42 tons.
How?
42 tons flying at 1,900 kilometers an hour.
I imagine that's going to leave a bit of an impact crater when it lands.
With a lift-to-drag ratio of 0.6. Let me explain this one to you. That means it's outputting 47,880 kilograms of thrust. Or 469,542,402 newtons of force. To put that massive number into an idea you can understand, that is 1.6 million more newtons than every single nuclear test and nuclear combat detonation from 1944 to modern day. in order to make this thing do 1,900 kilometers an hour.
Huh.
I thought the Orc Tornado was bad. I thought the Tyrannid Watermelon was an insane idea. Welcome to the Imperial Guard Planet Killer. With that much force behind it, it would literally leave a trail of destruction you would expect to find from an Exterminatus fleet.
So this is what Exterminatus is? They just unleash a fleet of these?
I guess. It makes no sense. You're not going to get 42 tons to move at almost Mach 2.
You forget this is 40k, not much does make sense, let's be honest.
Fair enough. Firepower-wise, it sucks balls. It has one heavy bolter on 42 tons. I can't believe they didn't try strapping more stuff to this.
In fairness, when you have forces generating a point, just plow through everything in sight.
It explains the overly thick, flat frontal wing designs. They're not flat because, you know, they wanted them to be. They're flat because they have to be. Because ramming speed's a thing.
I think the Orcs would like to nick one of these at some point.
But in all seriousness, even Hueys of Vietnam had more firepower to secure an LZ than this thing.
Fair enough.
My advice to the Imperium is just stick to the Valkyrie that doesn't fly and won't murder everyone in the process. Now,
except the Valkyrie doesn't fly.
We had two more, the Devourer dropship and Tetrarch Heavy Lander, but I have no information on these guys. I have 3 pictures on the Devourer and maybe 2 on the Tetrarch, and no actual amount of information. I think all total, my notes have actually copied the entirety of the information I have, which is a paragraph and a half for both aircraft. That's not a paragraph and a half each, that's total. The only reference I could really find to the Devourer that I could reference anything in was to compare the Lehman Russ getting off of it to determine size and scale, and I came out to 34,880 tons. Which is
now, just to put into perspective, the Devourer itself is considerably larger than a Space Marine Thunderhawk gunship, and is a two-decked vessel, with an upper deck housing infantry and a lower deck holding heavy equipment such as tanks and artillery.
It's actually slightly larger than a Stormbird, and it's 120 tons lighter than the USS Alabama South Dakota class battleship.
Well, it has to be if it has to fly.
I don't honestly know what that would take to get off the ground. I don't know that I want to know what that would take to overcome gravity.
Oh, that's easy. You just get one of the Aquilas pushing it behind it. There you go. Problem solved.
If you guys want to provide us with some links to some actual information, I will gladly sit down and build a scale model of these and do an addendum. But I need the information, otherwise I'm just kind of. There's a point at which being an engineer, also see Warlock, Magician, and Wizard, where you simply don't have enough information to draw any conclusions at all, and we're at that point.
Yeah, because the only information we can get in regards to the Tetrarch is that it's capable to land an entire company of troops.
Yep.
And it has a shit ton of turrets on it, but that's about it. And skis. Well, they look like skis. But that pretty much wraps up for this edition of Aeronautica. We hope you've enjoyed it. We apologise for it taking so long this time, but join us next time where we'll be taking a look at the aircraft of the Forces of Chaos, who are long overdue for an episode.
Joy to the world.
Indeed.
I get to embrace my inner Slaneshi.
Indeed. And some biology as well, because there'll be the Helldrake, which acts like a living creature. Which will be interesting.
Okay then!
So, until then, this has been Remleiz from 40k Theories.
And this has been Fiaura.
And we'll see you again next time. Bye bye.
Bye.